So today I'm very pleased to be able to present Tom Lent, who's the Policy Director for the Healthy Building Network and has over 30 years of experience with environmental assessment issues, primarily focused on the health and environmental impact of buildings, materials, and energy. He helps coordinate development of the Green Guidelines for Healthcare, lead for healthcare and sustainable bioplastic guidelines, with a focus on material toxicity issues, and he also sits on a variety of other standard-setting committees for indoor air quality, green chemistry, and healthy business design. Tom has co-authored a wide range of studies of the comparative health and environmental impact of floorings, plastics, and other building materials. He currently oversees the development of rating criteria for the Healthy Building Network's Pharos Project, and he'll be explaining the Pharos Project today so that you can see how that it works. And he also coordinates the Health Product Declaration Pilot Program. He was honored with the Environmental Award for Outstanding Achievement by Region 9 of U.S. EPA for his work in transforming the building materials market. So I'm extremely pleased to welcome Tom to our webinar this afternoon, and I'm going to turn it over to him so that he can get into the nitty-gritty. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Lynn. Despite the EPA's honorifics, we still have a lot of transforming to do of the building material industry. While green buildings and green chemistry seems like a natural match, there are lots of toxics in building materials, including some of the materials that help make buildings otherwise green. And it's, oops, I got to get moving. See my slide moving here. Here we go. Okay. Now, healthy building materials for a long time have been synonymous with green labels. There are a whole range of VOC content and emissions programs that have sprung up to evaluate the content or the emissions of volatile organic compounds, and with many people telling us that their label is the best. And this has really defined what healthy materials have been for a long time, under the theory that that people are exposed to the VOCs that are emitted from materials and interior finishes, and then ventilation systems blow those VOCs away. They continue to come out but are diluted by the ventilation. And we can evaluate whether those are safe or not by throwing a sample of the product into a test lab, measuring the emissions, the rate of emissions each hour under test conditions, and then modeling that, how that would work in a whole building by taking the amount of carpet, for example, that would be in a building of a specific volume and with the ventilation rates that are mandated by code. And then by some fairly simple math, you can predict what the concentration of those VOCs will be in micrograms per meter cube or parts per million. That we can compare against charts that have been developed by the state of California and others, establishing reference exposure levels where no impact on health is found. And then programs like the LEED program and other green building programs generally mandate that no product contribute more than 50% of that reference exposure level. All well and fine so far, and these IAQ programs actually have done a lot of good over the some 10 years that they've been in play, driving formaldehyde and other volatile organic compound levels down in many building products, inspiring a lot of reformulation by manufacturers to meet these thresholds. But there are problems with these programs as well, limitations on how much they actually tell us about how healthy a building is. Most of them have a limited number of VOCs that are tested, and there's still a lot of debate about whether that's all the relevant VOCs. The dilution rates that determine what we're predicting the level of VOCs will be, and comparing to those so-called safe levels, are based on school and commercial buildings for which these are developed. Homes don't tend to have ventilation systems, and so VOCs aren't diluted the same. as they are in commercial buildings, and so the concentrations from the same resilient flooring, for example, would be a lot higher in a home than it would be in a school and commercial buildings. We're still working on getting the programs to recognize that and adjust. There are no cancer thresholds used in these programs at this point, so other chronic diseases are covered, but cancer is not. Many of the programs are trade association-based programs, improving them challenging. And they really only cover the exposure in use in the building, and they only cover VOCs. And these particular problems, of course, will really limit a lot of the health issues that can be associated with building materials that aren't connected, that aren't explicitly just do with the use phase. For example, the dioxins from polyvinyl chloride manufacture are more a problem at manufacture and at end of life than they are. There are a growing number of chemicals, such as those that the EPA has been targeting for action plans recently, that show up in lots of building materials and are being targeted by REACH and are showing up in biomonitoring studies and are showing up in dust samples, and like the phthalates are associated with a whole range of health problems, and we know are being taken up in the bodies, but are not VOCs, and therefore are not covered by the VOC monitoring programs that are prevalent in green building right now. So I'm going to give you a quick run through of how this is starting to change now, what we're doing about this limitation. These programs started in the 90s, and like I said, have been going for quite a while. Way back in 2000, a credit for the avoidance of PVC was introduced for the LEED green building system. That was shuffled off to a committee for many years, the Technical Science Advisory Committee that hemmed and hawed and went around and around about it for quite a while, dealing with conflicting input from environmental health activists and industry. Meanwhile, though, on a parallel track, the Green Guide for Healthcare, which is not part of the U.S. Green Building Council, is a separate organization, but it was building on the same structure that the LEED system for rating buildings was, with agreement from LEED. Was developed. We developed it with a whole range of material avoidance credits to try and sort of address the things that were missing in the LEED building rating system. That was finally incorporated into LEED in 2010 in LEED for Healthcare, or I should say part of it was incorporated. Expanding the VOC measures to cover more materials than had previously been covered was included in LEED for Healthcare. A bunch of lead, mercury, and other heavy metal issues were included, and a wide range of issues, PFOAs, hexavalent chromium, expanded urea formaldehyde, avoidance and antimicrobial issues were dealt with in furniture. But the halogen credits for the halogenated compounds were all moved over to a pilot library for further testing. Meanwhile, LEED was getting very excited about LCA. I say the U.S. Green Building Council was, seeing this as a nice science-based way to deal with the impact of materials. They were excited about it, particularly with the advent of environmental product declarations, which made it a little more accessible to designers, and product category rules for beginning to make LCAs more consistent in how they are applied. And a number of organizations have been working with manufacturers to get more LCAs happening on building products and to challenge them to increase that. But of course, LCAs have been very controversial around their addressing of health issues, and LEED recognized sometime last year that if they were going to bring LCA credits into the LEED system, that they would have to do something else to address health. And the result of that was a credit that was first proposed middle of last year, which has become two credits now. One, which is an ingredient reporting credit, a disclosure credit, interestingly enough, based on the green screen. That is, the requirement is that all of the ingredients in a building product that meet the green screen benchmark 1 need to be disclosed in order to get credit under this program. And second, then avoidance credit, which was originally based on all of those materials that I described previously, has been identified in LEED for Healthcare, including the halogenated materials credit. In public comment revisions, they changed that. They kind of shied away from publishing their own avoidance lists, and instead have turned it in its current version into somewhat of a REACH credit. So it's more on information reporting, like the REACH system, and to obtain this credit, a manufacturer either needs to be registered in REACH in Europe or do something equivalent here. And what that will actually look like is still kind of a curious enigma. They're still working out exactly how this might actually work. This may change a lot by the time of a 5th comment period that this version of LEED will go through. They'll be publishing a new version in, I believe, October, which will be open for public comment. Then, for the first time ever, the LEED system will go into an extended beta that will probably last midway through 2013 while working out issues. We may end up back with more of an avoidance credit, or it may stay more of a reporting credit at this stage, with the avoidance credits staying in the pilot library. That remains to be seen. I can talk about that more in the Q&A. But meantime, while LEED has been going around and around trying to figure out what to do about toxics and materials, the Living Building Challenge, which is kind of a LEED plus, it's a very aggressive green building rating system. Not really a rating system so much as its name implies, a challenge. There are no scores the way in LEED you get points for each thing you do, and you add them up and see if you've got enough to get a silver, gold, or platinum LEED award. In the Living Building Challenge, it's all or nothing. You do all of the prerequisites that are required to be called a living building, and then get it. And in the materials area, there's a pretty aggressive red list of chemicals and chemical classes that are required to be avoided in all materials that go into a living building. If you know anything about building materials, you look at this and say, that's going to be a little challenging for current construction, and certainly it is. And in fact, they've had to make some exceptions to get buildings built, and there are some of the criteria here which are virtually impossible to do for some product categories. But when they do that, when they make an exception, they do an interesting advocacy piece in it, which is that the design team needs to write a letter to the manufacturer basically saying we're using your material under protest. And I don't know if protest may be the wrong word, but under advisement, it's that they are looking for an alternative to the material, and for the next project we'll be looking for something else that doesn't include the chemical on the red list, and they hope that manufacturer will be responsive and be able to keep their business. So it's encouraging engagement between the architects, designers, contractors, and the manufacturers on these, even when they can't totally avoid them. That's only one of many red lists that are popping up in green building right now. While LEED was working with volatiles and formaldehyde and a few fluorocarbons, the GGHC advanced the red list of what to avoid, as I described. LEED for Healthcare followed with, added a few more that the GGHC had included. The pilot extended this slightly farther with some more halogenated. The Living Building Challenge encompasses a lot of that, plus a few more. The EPA action lists, which are used by some design firms, have extended into chlorinated paraffins, NPEs that show up in paint, and concerns about the isocyanates and bisphenol A. Perkins & Will, a major architectural firm, has published its own precautionary list, which of course overlaps and is different also. They've recently added an asthmagens list. The Living Building Challenge has added a whole watch list of things that aren't excluded but are on the way out. And Google has an even more extensive list that goes beyond all of these. To try and bring all of this together, Clean Production Action and HBN work together on a red list, and I'll be talking more about how we address this in Pharos in a moment. Google, as I mentioned, is one of the most aggressive red lists of chemical avoidance out there in the business right now, and they're very aggressively trying to extend this to all of their construction on all of the materials, not just the interior finished materials, but all the materials you're using. Incredibly aggressive program, and they've been doing a very good job of getting manufacturers to pay attention to them, being one of the more active builders in a down economy. So the Pharos Project that I've been working on for a number of years now is an effort to help bring some order to all of this chaos and help architects, designers, specifiers, engineers, contractors, and owners wade through all of the green labels and the confusion of red lists. And we start with, well, we provide a set of scores for real products. These are for actual products, not just typical products. We get manufacturers to provide us information about what's in their products. And we rank it by some measures that I'll describe. First of all, we start with the VOC programs where green building has been focused. And each of the different programs is rated by whether it is a third-party independent certification or a second-party trade association or just a first-party claim, and we provide rationale for the 1 to 10 score that we place it on. But going beyond VOCs, we drive down into the content of the product, both through manufacturer disclosures about what's in the product and a lot of research that we do around the industry for each product category that we open, doing patent research, looking to disclosures in other countries, and both to find out what's really in individual products where the manufacturer doesn't disclose it all, and also to find out more generally what is used in that, and seeing what the hot spots are going to be for that sector. And that feeds into a toxic content score, which goes beyond the VOC emission score to encompass all ingredients, volatiles, semi-volatiles, non-volatiles, in the product, and and then provides you with information about a specific product. You can drill down in to the profile for an individual product, like this one here, and see explanations for why we scored it the way we did. In this case, a red flagged chemical, ethyl carbamate, found in the disclosure of the ingredients, triggered that score. You can drill into to look at that particular chemical, see what lists, what authoritative hazard lists it's listed on, which is where we derive our information about the health endpoints, and about what restricted substance lists that chemical may be on as well as where we're not finding information yet, what health endpoints we've not found any hazards associated with yet, which of course is not a guarantee of safety, for that maybe it may just be a data gap. We've got a database of over 20,000 chemicals now screened against 26 authoritative chemical hazard lists, most of them governmental lists, though some NGO lists to fill in gaps. We rate these by a scheme that is informed by the green screen approach, with priority health endpoints getting higher ratings and higher confidence levels in the science getting higher ratings. We differ from green screen a little bit in that we've split the persistent bioaccumulative toxicants into a higher category than the carcinogens, mutagens, reproductive, developmental, and endocrine disruptors. We have a special circle of hell for PBTs. But we simply have a multi-benchmark scale that is based on the work that CPA has done with green screen, which I know you've had presentations on previously. But for those who missed that, it's a benchmarking program for chemicals that looks at a series of criteria to map progress between the worst red list chemicals to truly safer chemistry. You can look up a product that's not, that we haven't researched in Pharos yet. Any product can be researched using our chemical library, where you can type in a chemical name or a CAS number and find it, drill in and find out what list it's on, whether these lists are green screen benchmark 1 lists, whether they're, in this case, there's a developmental toxicity listing, which is a US NIH list plus 3 others, and it's also rated at a high hazard, again, on the green screen criteria. With going down into the detailed listings, you can see all of the lists that this chemical has been rated on for developmental toxicity. And you can click into any of those lists to find out more information about that specific list and get back to the source. We also look at chemicals by compound groupings, and some of the hazard lists work that way, and we'll list all of the restricted substances lists that chemical may trigger. But we go beyond just direct hazard. In this case, you can see that the score for this product was affected by an integral manufacturing residual. That is styrene, which is in the styrene butadiene rubber, whereas styrene butadiene rubber does not get a particularly bad rating on the hazard list. It's been flagged by IARC, but only for being not classifiable for carcinogenicity. But there are catalysts and monomers of concern, and we consider those possible contaminants of the product itself. And so we rate them on that toxic content score. And we also use this information that we've gathered through our research on the feedstocks, catalysts, and additives and intermediates that go into the manufacture of those products to create a manufacturing toxicity score as well. Pharos also is not only about toxics. We score renewable materials, that is recycled or bio-based content, and renewable energy use in manufacture as well. All of these are described under the certifications and scoring tab. We believe in full disclosure for ourselves as well as for the manufacturers that we're rating. So Pharos describes all of the procedures that we use for evaluating chemicals and rolling that up to evaluate products. It's all there on the website. Pharos itself is currently a subscription-based tool. We're working to get past that, but it is for now. But all of our documentation about our procedures is in front of the paywall, so available to all the public. Of course, all this depends on getting good information about what's in the products. As I mentioned to you, we go through a lot of research because what we get from manufacturers often looks something like this. So we have a lot of research tools that we use to drill around beside that. But we're working to establish a real what am I trying to say? A religion of disclosure in the industry to really change the perception of it. Architects and designers are increasingly wanting to know more, feeling responsible to their clients to understand the potential health hazards. And so in an effort to both establish this culture through a standards process and to expand use of disclosed information in association with hazard much more rapidly than we can with the deep dive research we do with Pharos, we've developed the Health Product Declaration, which is kind of I describe it sometimes as an MSDS for the design trades. And it was designed by and for design professionals and building owners. What you see on the screen there are some of the largest, most progressive architecture and design firms in the country who participated in developing this. It sets out a standard for disclosure for ingredients of the contents of products, which includes a substance name, CAS number or species, in case of wood, percentage of weight, and health hazard warnings from authoritative lists, recycled content, whether the ingredient uses nanotechnology, and its role or function in the product. Now, our goal is 100% disclosure, but we don't always get it. Sometimes because the manufacturer believes something is a trade secret. Other times because they're getting a component from another manufacturer where they can't, where they're under an NDA and can't disclose or don't even know. And the HPD defines rules for fully disclosed and what to say if they don't fully disclose. So we're trying to, at least where we can't get full disclosure, we're trying to at least establish a common language so that that customer and manufacturer have a real understanding of what is disclosed and what is not, and can have discussions about it. Bottom line is that the manufacturer must disclose the health warnings and the functional role, even if they don't disclose the ingredient. And then there's a summary section above the content section where they indicate the certifying party, that is whether this is a self-declared certification or is third-party certified. And a disclosure level, that is how much of the product actually has been fully disclosed of all the intentionally added ingredients. And we're driving after residuals as well. And in this place, the manufacturer indicates what level they have tested or estimated residuals to. And then we have a set of hazard lists that they're mandated to disclose to indicate. We've got 30 manufacturers who participated in the HPD pilot that just completed. And all but one of them was able to produce an HPD during the month that we gave them to work on it. And most of those, about 24 of them, actually were complete enough to review, which we thought was pretty good for this first round. And they're just starting to figure this out on a fairly short time frame, and we're now going into review period. We started. I'm sorry, actually, given 2 months. We started the pilot in March, closed it just a few weeks ago, and now we've got 100 architects, designers, specifiers, engineers, some building owners, all participating in a review, looking at the HPDs that have been generated by the manufacturers and giving us their feedback on how well this actually works. And we're also going back to the manufacturers to get their feedback on the process. We'll be revising the form over the summer and then releasing it in the fall for public use. And we have a working group that is that's going to be carrying this standard on, and you're welcome to participate. So, in summary, what we're doing here is a lot of management of a lot of chemical hazard data, and this has gotten pretty complex. We have a lot of different authoritative hazard lists and out there, and the task for an interested design firm to try and do some diligence on what they're getting from a manufacturer was pretty difficult to understand, even define, much less understand these hazard lists and line them up with what's in the products. So what we're doing, what we do with the Pharos project, and what we're talking with other people doing similar projects in other building categories, is combining all of those hazard lists into a single hazard database, and then putting some assessment on top of that for adjusting, indicating what level of concern a particular hazard listing indicates. That's what we do in the chemical library in Pharos. So we come out with a more nuanced look at what those hazards mean. We plug into that a lot of research on what goes on in the life cycle of products, particularly the manufacture and ultimately end of life, to create the scores that I showed you in the Pharos building product library that we eventually are planning to plug into the building information models that architects and designers are using now. We combine that with the manufacturer's information to make that final synthesis view for the designers to help them make choices. We're developing this health product declaration to expand the process of getting information from the manufacturer directly to the designer and into our Pharos tools, and to develop the culture of full disclosure and association with hazard warnings. That is forcing more discussions from manufacturers up the supply chain as they realize they don't know about residuals in their products that the HPD looks for. We're looking forward to integrating more full green screens. Right now, we only include the green screen so far as it establishes benchmarks, usually just primarily benchmark 1 for authoritative hazard lists, but we're hoping to encourage more manufacturers to do full green screens and be able to incorporate that into our assessments. We're working with LaborSum now with Blue-Green Alliance is developing a tool somewhat akin to Pharos' chemical library, but aimed at labor unions and other workers in manufacture. And we're working with the whole alternatives assessment move now to ultimately get those manufacturers to help make better decisions on their products, which of course requires more information from more places. And all of this, we think, is going to provide great opportunities for developing what we're starting to call a data commons. As we're not doing this alone, there are a lot of parallel projects going on in and out of the building industry that are all looking for the same information about chemicals and their hazards, that all have common problems with establishing chemical IDs, so we actually know whether chemical we think we're talking about is associated with the correct hazard, and is more complex than one might think. That would be a whole hour's talk in itself. And getting the kind of location, product, and other alternative assessment information linked up with it is, I think, making some real opportunities if we can find ways to share data between systems like the ones we've developed and others being developed in electronics and the automotive industry and elsewhere. So I encourage you all to type in your questions and consider taking a look at Pharos. You can get a free trial to get a sample in on it. We've got a blog where we discuss what we're learning in the research that we do on chemicals and products. That's free. There's no it's not behind the paywall. And the health product declaration is an open standard, open to anyone interested in using that, and we'd welcome your input on that. So that concludes my formally prepared remarks, and I'm now ready for your discussion. So type those questions in. And Lynn, are you going to be telling me what we've got queued up so far?
We don't have any questions yet, so
I've stunned them.
Yeah, you've either just bowled over the audience so much that they're trying to ask their questions, or I don't know. So hopefully we'll get some comments and questions. But I found that very interesting. I have some familiarity with the Pharaohs list. As you know, I helped work on some of those last summer with Tom. And I just, it's very interesting because I was just learning that the TRI program, the Toxics Release Inventory, is going to, has a whole section now that they're going to be encouraging companies to utilize to track their reductions. And it seems to me that, I don't know, there's probably some opportunities for interactions between the data that you all are, that the Healthy Building Network and Pharaohs are providing, and the kinds of reporting that companies will be doing. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I don't know as much as I would like to about what that reporting is actually going to encompass. We started when we first rolled out Pharaohs several years ago. We started incorporating TRI data, and then very shortly after we'd built the spider that pulled the TRI data into our system, they totally reworked the system, and we had to start up from scratch. But for a variety of reasons, we decided to hold off on dealing with emissions yet. But I'm interested to see how the new reporting system is playing out. We may reintroduce that in. Right now, Pharos is totally based on chemicals in as opposed to chemicals out. Other than the VOC emissions piece of it, it's we're very based on getting inherently hazard chemicals out of both the manufacturer and the final product. But which is I think will remain our term bias. But when it's important to recognize that that other hazardous chemistry is created in the process, and so capturing emissions of things that may not be represented in the inputs is important, and doing things like the VOC emissions testing to find chemicals that are created as products cure is remains important, as is looking at decomposition products at end of life, which has been another challenge that we're following the green screen process of determining assessments for that closely, and we'll be incorporating that into Pharos when we can.
Great. I do have a question. I think the whole TRI thing is very interesting, so thanks.
Yeah. Let's talk more about that.
Can you elaborate a bit more on the changes to the lead avoidance credit and its association with REACH?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, I mentioned the U.S. Green Building Council got cold feet about having their own avoidance list, their own proprietary avoidance list, and I think wanted to reference a list of chemicals for avoidance that was pretty well vetted. REACH, I think, was appealing to them because because the REACH list has gone through a lot of governmental and industry vetting, and so it'd be so they figured it would be harder to attack than one that came from the from the more activist-driven processes that that created a lot of the lists that they were working with. But it's still a little. It's still actually somewhat unclear about exactly what the credit language they've proposed so far means. I could see it either like the very narrowest definition would mean that it would just be there's something like 14 SVHC chemicals that have actual sunset dates on them right now in REACH. But then there's a much larger candidate list of chemicals that have been pretty heavily vetted already and are on their way, but are going through the analysis of what what regulatory constraints are already on them, and when and how they should be implemented. That would be kind of the next, a more aggressive leadership interpretation of what it means to use REACH. And of course, I think doing something like the SIN list would actually be more appropriate for the U.S. Green Building Council's program, given that it is supposed to be a leadership program. If they are going to base on the REACH program. But the other interesting thing about this is that they're not just using it as a proxy for creating an avoidance list, but actually suggesting that products that are going to contribute to the credit need to be REACH registered or some equivalent, meaning that they're looking for some certification program to develop a third-party certified equivalent of REACH registration in the United States for manufacturers who are not who are not over in the European market and so not already doing REACH registration. This I find a little bit mind-blowing. Trying to imagine how that might actually get set up in this country, and there's a lot of devil in the details there about how and if that might work, that I think are going to get hashed around a lot in the next couple of months. I would welcome anyone who is on the call who knows a lot about REACH, who wants to talk with me about this and discuss how this might or might not work, and can help me interpret what for the U.S. Green Building Council what they're doing and the wisdom or not of it, and where they might go with it. I would welcome anyone who wanted to help me with those discussions, because I'm in a position to help them think about that some. Just other little background on the credit. They're not expecting the entire building to meet either the disclosure credit or the avoidance credit. There you get points for you get your first point for getting 20% of the materials going to the building to meet the credit, and then another point towards your ward level for getting another 10% of the materials. So they're starting low, and going to test that out and see how hard it is to do 20% of the building, and then we'll build up from there in future years. Lots of other challenges and potential loopholes that might create, but more than I can get into with anyone who's interested in that. Please feel free to contact me if you're interested in any way in working on comment on the LEED credits.
Great. So a lot there.
Yeah.
We have another question, and you sort of touched on it with the TRI question, but it says, does the Pharaohs website provide guidance on environmentally sound disposal of construction materials?
Not at this time. We were very ambitious when we first set up Pharos. Anyone who's been following it for a while and seen we had every environmental impact and included end of life at that time, and decided that was a bigger piece than we could bite off at that point. But we are looking at how to incorporate both scoring for availability of good good end of life options for products, that is infrastructure for return and recycling or refurbishment of materials, for example, or compostability, both for end-of-life options and for what happens when that doesn't happen. That is for degradation products, with combustion or degradation disposal. But that's still in development. Those are pretty challenging. Those are the ones that we could use allies who want to help us think through how best to do those.
We have another
lots
question.
of calls for help here.
A lot of help needed. So we have another question going back to your leads, to the reach question, I think. When Tom says 20% of the building, is it by weight, part, spending? I think that's what they meant, spending. So.
Yeah, usually it's by cost, and I think that's the plan with these credits as well. There are several other credits, like for recycled content, FSC wood certification, where the U.S. Green Building Council has done this kind of percentage of materials credit, and they are generally by cost, and that's a metric that's most easily obtainable by the design teams as they're trying to document their building. They already track that one well, better than they do weight.
That could result, though, couldn't it, in a relatively small part of the building being?
Yes, it could. Good point. You could end up, if you did it, if you were able to do the right thing with fairly high value items, like interior finish materials tend to be cost more per unit of materials, then you might end up with a lot less than 20% of the total mass of the project. Frankly, though, I'm more concerned. I'm less concerned about that, since high-value materials also tend to be high chemical materials, so that may not be a bad focus. But I'm more concerned that there's going to be a loophole in the other direction of some big bulk materials, like steel or something that are used in large volumes in the building, will be sufficient to pass the credit, and therefore there won't be any drive to actually look critically at places where those toxic materials are appearing. And in fact, there have been comments from EPA and some of the rest of us to U.S. Green Building Council to focus the credit more on known areas of high toxic concern in the building instead of just on the building as a whole.
Yeah, because it kind of sets up a dichotomy between the structure of the building relative to the interior furnishing of the building, right?
Right. As we argued also, maybe that focus just on the interior for this credit might actually be more to the point, at least for a first phase of it, since since occupants are most exposed to the interior finished materials, and so you want to make sure you're getting the toxics out of those first. Not that you don't want to clean up the whole building, but if you're going to prioritize, then you should start with those that people are most intimately wrapped up in.